All right. Okay. So before we begin, I just kind of want to give you guys a little overview on what we're going to be talking about today. Of course, we know we're talking about presence and embodied presence. And when we dive into this topic, I think, especially those of us, I know like all three of you guys have been on more of like a spiritual journey and more of like an inner journey. And a huge part of doing that is learning to be more present and being more grounded and rooted in the body. A lot of what we're going to be talking today is more of like a fully embodied presence. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, or at least from my kind of perspective. And if you guys have anything that you want to share, anything that you've kind of observed in your journey, or what that means for you. I also want to go into kind of like the opposite, like the polar aspects of, this reality that we live in on this planet. We all know that polarity is a huge thing for us to explore, especially in the spiritual realms, and how just bringing balance to some of these feelings that we feel, some of like the lighter, happier, more lighter emotions and feelings that we can all feel, as well as like the shit, the heaviness, the density, right? Like all of those lower aspects of what we can feel and stuff. So with, talking about presence and talking about, the now and living in the moment, if we're not here, where are we, right? And what's happening when we're not fully present, when we're not fully in our body. So this is, it's a beautiful topic, but there are some kind of like heavier elements to it that we are going to touch today, because I think it's really, really important that we honor like the whole full spectrum experience of what it means to be human. And I think especially in the spiritual community, there can be a lot of like love and light and this goal to like always feel good and be in this like blissful state, which in reality just is not attainable. And it's really just like not true. I think, for any of us to always be in that, and it would be really taking away from, the human experience and what we came here to experience. So that being said, I think what we'll start with is, does anyone have like anything that they want to share around what this means to you, like what embodied presence is, embodiment, being present, living in the here and now? Does anyone have anything that they want to share or add? And if not, that's totally fine. No? Okay. So I'll just kind of share from my perspective where I think we're going to go with this tonight. So when I came up with this topic, embodied presence, a lot of what I've been experiencing in my life right now is just this deep devotion to my practices and to, meditating every day and taking care of my health and my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, spiritual health, all of it. And also kind of noticing this part of me that is just wanting to completely check out, to, getting sucked into older habits that I used to have that are kind of pulling me out of the present moment. Almost kind of like these addictive habits and behaviors around like TV, like binge watching Netflix, even like cannabis and substances. This is something that I've kind of really pulled away from, but lately there's been this desire to like get high and just fully check out of my, of what's like happening for me. And food, even turning to food for comfort. I'm not sure if any of you guys have been experiencing this as well, but just kind of like noticing this like urge to just like fully check out and not want to be here right now. And not like in the sense of like fully leaving your body, but just like really, you know, feeling overwhelmed, right? So I kind of thought that we would talk a little bit about dissociation, because I feel like that's what's happening. And this is really a natural response to trauma. I did a little bit of research on looking at kind of like the psychological lens of dissociation. And I'm just going to read to you guys this definition that I came across. So what is dissociation? It's a disconnect between a person's sensory experience, thoughts, sense of self, or personal history. And reasons that we may dissociate can include, it's a natural response to trauma. Obviously, I think we all know there's a lot of trauma that we're experiencing right now. You know, a lot of abuse. There's a lot of just chaos in our reality. You know, it's just, yeah, we all know what's going on here. So it's just a natural response to that, as well as being a common symptom of mental health issues. I know myself personally, I do struggle with depression and anxiety, and I find that this is kind of like the first sign of me kind of spiraling back into like that depressive state. Anxiety is, I can notice right away. I think previously I never had that awareness where it's like, okay, I'm starting to completely dissociate, but now I'm starting to really notice when that's happening, so that I can kind of like pull myself out of that. And I think, yeah, I wanted to share that because I think it's nice to know that when we can kind of notice that, we can also, instead of like allowing ourselves to continue to like spiral and turn to some of these habits or addictions or things that kind of bring comfort from just like escaping our reality, we have that awareness around why we may be doing that, so we can bring ourselves back to kind of really connecting with ourselves. Because I really do believe that a lot of our mental health issues are more than just mental health issues. I think it's a real spiritual thing, and it really arises from this disconnect from our soul and our true nature, or our authentic self. So that's just kind of my experience right now. If anyone has anything else that they want to share, if you guys have been experiencing anything similar, by all means, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or just add something in the chat. Otherwise, we can continue. Or if you have any questions either. Okay, I'll keep going. I can see, I think some of you are like chatting maybe. But yeah, I wanted to also talk about dissociation, or this, dissociation in the 21st century, or the information age, and some of our programming and how we've kind of been conditioned by society to dissociate. We have all of these technologies, especially when we look at like social media and these like streaming platforms, glamorization of like sex, drugs, and alcohol. And there's all of this like bright, shiny light on like, you know, these things that we can kind of like lean on to just pull us out of our reality. So just kind of like knowing that it's a huge part of our conditioning, I think helps us also kind of like pinpoint, you know, maybe why that's something that we kind of turn to, and why that's something that, you know, is present for a lot of us. And also knowing that these, you know, a lot of these technologies were kind of designed to do that, right? You know, scrolling on your phone, Instagram, we can easily just kind of get lost into this like trance, and all of a sudden you're like fuck, 45 minutes have gone by, like what the fuck was I doing, right? And it's just like this overwhelm of information causing us to want to like dissociate even more and more and more, especially when we feel overwhelmed, which is another reason why we may dissociate. And this is especially common for those that identify as empaths and highly sensitives, which I'm sure all of you do if you're here, and I as well. So I feel for this one especially. But then we want to talk about how we can kind of bring ourselves back and how we can work on really being present, and some tools and practices that we can work with. But yeah, we will get to that. So I wanted to talk about, yes, like these technologies and these things that can kind of pull us out of our reality, but then also talking about if we're not fully in our body and if we're not like wrapped up in these other things, then where are we, right? And a lot of the times it's when we talk about embodiment, when we talk about being present, we talk about really being like in our heart, and as opposed to being in our head, right? So another way that we can completely, get pulled out of the present moment is when we're too much in the mind. I know, Renee, you were kind of talking about this earlier, where your thoughts are just kind of like running rapid. And when we're in the mind, we are completely disconnected from the present, because we're either obviously in the past, we're worrying about the past, or a lot of anxiety comes from something that happened prior to the present moment, or we'll be worrying about the future, right? Thinking about things that haven't happened yet. This is also kind of anxiety around what we have to do or what's to come. So a huge tool that we can work with to bring ourselves back into the present moment is just noticing when we're in our head. I think it's, the more we connect with ourselves and the more we kind of journey inward, the more we can kind of like notice that aspect of ourselves that's just like running in the mind. And having that awareness to just bring us back into the body using the breath is a huge tool that we can work with. Just noticing when you're in your head and just using your breath to kind of slow yourself down and bring yourself back into the body and back into the present moment. And also I wanted to talk a little bit about when we are in our heads, right? When we're not in our bodies, we're almost kind of like opening ourselves up for other energies to kind of come through, right? And this is a topic that I haven't spoken about before, and I'm a little bit nervous to kind of touch on this tonight, but I think it definitely needs to be talked about, because it's part of our experience when we are kind of opening ourselves up spiritually, and we are wanting to go into these spaces where we're kind of like meditating and we're connecting with different beings or different higher, information, all of these things. It can be really beautiful, but there can also be this aspect of these lower beings, these lower dimensional kind of energies and frequencies that can come in when we're totally disconnected from our body. So this is something that we just have to kind of be aware of. Noticing when you are in your mind, and sometimes you can have these like almost like you feel like you're getting pulled into more and more like negative thoughts. A lot of the times this can be other beings, like lower dimensional beings. When we're in our mind, the mind is actually connected to time, right? Or the illusion of time, because it's the past, the future, not necessarily the present, but it's also connection to the fourth dimension, which is just slightly above us here in the third dimension, which is also known as the astral realm, or the lower astral, especially is connected to the mind, which is where a lot of these lower energies, these lower dimensional beings can exist. And when we are in fear, when we are in anxiety, depression, these lower density emotions, these heavier emotions, that's when we almost become more visible to them. They can almost see us, and they can almost use us as like a food source, and they can kind of like feed off of our energy. And also, implant almost different thoughts, intrusive thoughts, a lot of people call them. So sometimes you may notice that you have these thoughts that just don't feel like your own. They're really, really dark and really negative, and just knowing that they aren't, most of the time. And it can also be like you're just getting pulled into like this negative energy, and it's hard to control, right? You just get completely lost and sucked into this like negative spiral. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, or if you've experienced this at all. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is that we have control, right? We have control of our own energy, and we want to just be aware of when we are opening ourselves up, and we do feel this, and we are in those lower feelings, that we can change that we're all alchemists, that we can all come back into our heart, we can come back into love, we can come back into the present moment, which completely makes us invisible to these beings again, and we can really, really connect with our own energy again. And I don't share this to like scare you guys, or to promote fear in any way. No, it can be a heavier topic, and it can be a little bit scary if this is new information for you. And it's something that I've been exploring quite a bit lately, because I've really been feeling this and sensing this, and it's kind of pulled me out of a lot of spiritual stuff, because I didn't have a lot of information and a lot of awareness around what was happening. And it was like, oh my God, it's all wrong, it's all bad, it's all terrible, it's all dark, it's all, it just really kind of terrified me. And I just want to, empower you guys to know that you have so much power and so much control over your energy, and these beings or these frequencies don't need to kind of pull you out of that, and that we have power and we have control over that. So we are going to talk about how we can kind of override those energies, and also knowing that if you do feel this, or if you do have had any experiences with this, a lot of the times, this is part of our experience, because it's a lesson, it's teaching us something, an aspect of ourselves, right? These beings can only see us, or can only feed off of us if there's like a part of us that's in them as well. So it's just kind of showing us areas that need more healing, that we can just learn to love ourselves more, and come back into that just loving awareness and that unconditional love for ourselves, because a lot of the times that's something that I think we struggle with. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, you guys are with me. There is, if anyone is wanting to kind of explore this a little bit deeper, I do have a teacher that I would recommend, that I've kind of been learning from. Her name is Gigi Young, and she is on YouTube, and she's been doing a lot of work kind of touching on the 8th sphere or the lower astral realm. And yeah, if you are wanting to go deeper into that, I don't want to go too deep into that, but she does a really good job at covering some of these heavier topics, but these topics that I think are really important for us to really understand, just to keep ourselves safe and protected in these spiritual spaces, because yeah, there's a lot out there, right? Moving on though, unless anyone has any questions or anything they want to share on that topic. I think I covered most of what I wanted to. Also in the spiritual community, I've noticed that there are a lot of like new age teachings, or maybe you guys have heard the term the false light teachings, which have like this layer of truth in them, but there's also a lot of distortion, and a lot of them promote these dissociative teachings, like channeling other beings and allowing these beings into our bodies, astral traveling where we're like completely leaving our bodies, plant medicine even. This is something that I have worked with in the past, but I'm less I don't know what I want to say, but just something that I'm more aware of, just being really conscious of how we work with some of these medicines, because we are opening ourselves up quite a bit spiritually for attacks almost, and just different energies to come in that if we're not fully prepared and we're not fully aware of how to navigate it, can be a lot to process. Okay. So now moving on to some lighter stuff and how we can really come into the heart. Part of what I wanted to talk about is, I know most of you guys know that I also work with the human design system. And one thing that I really love about human design and some of the teachings that are really embedded in this system are that the mind is not designed to make decisions, right? We're designed to make decisions from an embodied place. We all have our own inner authority, or some don't. It depends on your type, but most of us have our own inner authority, which helps us to make decisions that are more aligned to like our true self, our true nature. And I just really love this perspective, because I think a lot of us, we spend a lot of time in our heads, and we really rely on the mind to kind of analyze everything and conceptualize things, and which it can do. It can be a really beautiful tool when used properly, when used to really just observe and be an observer of our experience, but it's not given like the full power and the full authority to make decisions for us. And also just noticing when we're giving power to anything outside of ourselves to make decisions for us, right? Really coming back into our inner knowing and connecting deeply with the body, so that we can make decisions from a really like embodied place, from a place that feels true to who we are, not allowing these like external opinions or mandates or even anything, right, and impose on any decisions that we are making for ourselves. And then moving into the gene keys. This is also, this is a book. It's called The Gene Keys. It's by Richard Rudd, that I really love. And it goes into basically our genes, and there's 64 codons or genes that we kind of explore in the book. And each one is connected to a different frequency, I guess you could say, which is experienced at various levels. So we have like the shadow element, then we have a gift element, and then we have a Siddhic element or siddhi, which is really just almost like an enlightened place. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about presence from the perspective of the author of this book when he talks about the city, which is like this place of really finding deep enlightenment from being present. So presence would be the city. And then we have the shadow, which is superficiality. And we can move from the shadow to the gift, which emerges as self-assurance, and then into the highest aspect, which is presence. And so what does he mean by superficiality or the shadow aspect of presence, right? We talked about like the polarity, and when I was talking about, you know, what is the opposite of being present? If we're not present, where are we? You know, we're either in our mind or we're just completely disconnected from our reality. And he talks about this element of superficiality, which he says, to live superficially is to live within the false illusions fabricated by the mind. We leave the present moment when we begin to think and enter this false reality known as time, right, or the mind, also connected to the fourth dimension or the astral and the eighth sphere that we were talking about. And this can really show up in various ways, just depending on who we are, where we're at. It can show up as more of like an absent, repressive nature, where we're just kind of like really repressing and not wanting to look at what's present, what's true, what's alive for us in that moment, just kind of avoidance. Or it can also show up as more of like this hectic, reactive nature where, you know, we are almost being like triggered and we're just really like reacting to whatever is present for us. And then we can move into this divine relaxation, which is self-assurance, right? This becomes a gift. And this is really a practice of being able to surrender to life in every moment, knowing that there are going to be highs and lows, and that, you know, we can't have one without the other. When we look at, you know, this aspect of polarity and having, you know, for example, happiness and sadness, right? If we look at those emotions, we wouldn't know what happiness was or what happiness felt like if we never knew what sadness felt like, right? And really learning to kind of see these as a whole. And when we can kind of like bring those energies together and find this place of like neutrality almost between the two, we're not like swaying from one, well, we are, right? We're kind of like going from one to the other, from one to the other. But when we learn to just surrender, we almost start to slow down or kind of close off that circle of like, you know, the pendulum is just swinging back and forth and back and forth. My guides were trying to just show it to me as like literally like being like a pendulum swinging, and you're going from one to the other, from one to the other, and then it starts to like slow down and it starts to circle, and you're almost like dancing with this energy where it's like, yeah, like I'm happy, but then I'm sad, and it's all kind of just beautiful because you understand that we can't have one without the other. And we start to understand that, you know, when we look at physics and we look at like a positive and a negative, you know, even just like magnets, right? They come together and they create a bond. And when we can really understand that and we can be present with all of it, right? There's this sense of peace, the sense of calm that really starts to emerge. And I think that's, you know, that's kind of what he's talking about here too, when he talks about self-assurance. It's really also learning to let go of thinking as the authority, the decision-making center, and surrendering into kind of just like allowing ourselves to move through life rather than trying to force things. And really understanding, and this goes more into the higher level with the union between both polarities. where we are, you know, he says, and I'm going to read this quote where he says, the manifestation of the presence of the divine. Yeah, so this city is the manifestation of the presence of the divine through a human instrument. Pure consciousness floods their being, silencing the mental activity and drawing the person into the eternal present moment. And so when we talk about presence, embodied presence, right, that was the topic of today's class. A couple of things come to mind for me, because we have present, like the now, the eternal now moment, the present moment, and then we have this word presence, right? And we start to think about, okay, this is a little bit different, right? And when we can live and when we can exist in that now moment, and we are going to explore this in the meditation, we can feel this presence just emerge, right? I'm sure some of you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's just this loving awareness that we experience, that is experienced through us, right? That we can only experience when we are fully in the body, when we're in the mind. You know, yes, we can observe, you know, the mind, and we can kind of, we're almost like slightly outside of ourselves, and we're like here observing the mind. But when we're fully dropped into the body, when we're fully in that embodied presence, it's like the observer just sits right here. It sits at our heart, right? So this is what I really want us to work on tonight, is noticing this embodied presence and coming into and really learning how we can connect with that. And there's a few different ways, a few different like embodiment practices that I do want to share before we go into our meditation. But yeah, do you guys, are we doing okay? Does anyone have any questions or anything that they wanted to share? I did want, you know, you guys to feel like you're a part of this as much as possible. This is just me kind of sharing my observations and things that I've been experiencing lately, and seeing if they resonate with anyone. But if anyone else has anything to share.
Yeah, Vanessa, I just wanted to say I really like what you said about like the pendulum and how that is genuinely like presence, right? Like it's, and embodying the good, like the happy and the sad and all those things, because it really is such a different experience when you aren't just happy all the time. You're good, you're okay, and everything else is, it is what it is. And you just did a really, really good job of explaining that, because I think so many people try and think of it as like, well, once I find my way and I find my path, like I'll just be happy at all times, right? And that's kind of like the false promises that you were talking about in the other areas that people are kind of doing right now. So I think that pendulum and like that circling around instead of going so far to one side or another is a really, really accurate way of explaining that.
Yeah, again, I'm glad that resonates. And it's almost like being in like the center of the storm. Like it's almost like, you know, when the pendulum starts to slow down and it's like circling and you're like right like at the eye of the storm. Some people call it like the zero point stillness, neutrality. And it's not this neutrality that's like, you know, oh, I'm neutral, like I don't have an opinion, or I don't, you know, I don't know truth or anything like that, right? It's just this knowing that it's all part of the experience, right? And that we're not like attaching to one or the other, but we're here for the full experience, right? For all of it. So yeah, I love that resonates. Anyone else before we continue?
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been trying to practice more mindfulness and stuff, and like going with the waves, because it's not always like, you know, calm waters. And I've had a few people tell me that like my third eye is fiery, or I've got like a lot of energy in my head. And I think I try and like think my way through things a lot more than like feeling them in my heart. And I think that's, yeah, just the way I sort of try and survive and get through things. But I'm realizing that that isn't sustainable all the time. Like it needs to move through other parts of me. And so, yeah.
And it's also like part of our conditioning, right? Like a lot of, you know, we've been told like, oh, you need to plan your future. You need to like, everything has to be so, you know, like strategic, or, you know, and some of us are like, no, I just want to flow. I just, you know, it goes completely against, you know, what society has taught, or what society expects us, how society expects us to show up, right? So it is a huge practice of like letting go and really dropping into the body so that we can allow life to just like move through us and to move us, right? So yeah, it's a practice. It's definitely something I have to keep, you know, practicing as well. And we all get caught up in judging ourselves or making ourselves wrong for, you know, maybe being too flowy, or, you know, not having a plan, or not having an idea of what we're going to do next. But I truly do believe that this is, you know, there's a lot of power that comes from being able to fully surrender, and a lot of beauty that can emerge from doing so, and dropping deeper into your body, and getting out of the mind as much as possible. Although the mind is not a bad thing, right? We're not here to kind of like victimize the mind. It's just learning how to use it, right? To just kind of self-reflect, and not necessarily like make decisions for us. But practices, right? Because I think a lot of us want practices, things that we can do to get us out of our head and get us back into the body. Meditation is one that a lot of people recommend for just a general practice. In terms of embodiment practices, it is a really mental practice. So we are going to be doing a meditation today that you guys can kind of use like this template. You will have the recording, so if you did like it, you can kind of come back and do this meditation at any time, or you can just kind of like create your own version of it. But I would recommend, a lot of it is just like activities that you have to be in your body, which a lot of the times is like physical activities, like working out, going for runs, going for walks. Being out in nature is also a really nice experience to just kind of like calibrate to the energy of nature, which helps us really kind of be present. I like going for like walks and just really kind of activating all of my senses, or allowing all of my senses to come online, and just be really intentional about like, what am I smelling? What am I seeing? What do I feel? Like feeling the wind, the breeze, like on your skin. Listening, like what do I hear? Listening to like the sounds of the birds, and just nature in general, right? So just like being super, super intentional about how your senses are engaging with nature when you're outdoors. Another thing is using like scents. Having essential oils or candles or incense can be another thing to just really like activate those senses and kind of bring you out of your head and connect you to that sensual nature, that sensual experience that does bring us back into the present. What else I have? And I do recommend, oh, another one that I love is cooking. Cooking with your senses, right? It's something that really connects us to all of our senses, right? It's smelling the food, tasting the food as you go, you know, playing around with different colors. Basically like art. Heather, I know you're like an amazing artist and doing a lot of artwork. I think that, do you find that kind of helps you take you out of your head and bring you back into your body?
Yeah, definitely. Like I feel more calm when I'm drawing or painting, and I find it's a time where I can go into my head, but I can also like I don't know, yeah, be more in my full body. Like
Yeah.
I'm using my mind, I'm feeling, yeah, it's like a lot all at once. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's because it's like, yeah, we don't want to like fully delete the mind, right? Like the mind is a beautiful tool, but having that like being in your full body, like you said, right? Like still using the mind, but also like being connected to your body, that's beautiful. So like music, anything that you guys do, any of like hobbies, anything that you just like really love to do, allowing yourself, creating time and space for you to do that. Playing around with like digital detoxes, or you know, deleting social media from your phone for a few hours or a week or whatever. Also, you know, just noticing when you're wanting to turn to certain like substances, food, any kind of like consumptive behaviors that may arise that are just kind of like taking you out of the present moment and out of your body, and replacing those with things that bring you joy and you know, connect you deeper into your body. Yeah, cooking for me, that's what I love to do. And then I would recommend definitely like a consistent meditation practice where you are practicing like using the mind as the observer and allowing yourself to kind of just like observe the thoughts and allowing them to just pass, rather than attaching to any thoughts and creating stories and all these like narratives and yeah, getting lost in thought. So just really understanding how we can connect with the heart. I would always say like dropping in and connecting with your heart in any meditation that you do, so that you're creating that harmony and balance between the head and the heart, right? It's not being in one, it's that dance with both of them. Does that make sense? Does that help? Also, I would recommend with meditation, for anyone that struggles with meditation, or really dropping into their body, like you find you're really in your head and you can't really come into that present moment or come deep into your body, work out or exercise, do something really physical, and then drop into your meditation right after, and you'll notice a huge change in how your meditation kind of goes. Does anyone have any questions or anything else before we do go into our meditation? No? Okay, this maybe, how do you guys feel about like a 20-minute meditation? Is that too much? We're here for it? All right. Okay, so I'll try and not rush either. But yeah, so however you're seated, if you're seated on a chair, the floor, bed, couch, whatever, just find a position that's comfortable for you, trying to kind of maintain a long spine. Preferably seated. I probably wouldn't do this one lying down. And if it feels comfortable for you, you can start to gently close the eyes. Starting to bring the attention and awareness inward. Just taking a moment to connect with your inner space. Just noticing any tension, any heaviness in the body, any sensations that are present for you right now. And we're going to start to work with really slowing down the breath. Taking long, deep, slow inhales through the nose. Really filling up the lungs, and exhaling through the nose, slowly letting go and releasing. Breathing in through the nose. Simply observing how your belly rises and falls with every inhale, And every exhale, as we breathe in new energy, new life, and we let go of and release all that no longer serves. And as we continue to focus on the breath, continue to focus on really slowing down the breath. Maybe even holding the breath, the top of our inhale, and then slowly, gently exhaling, fully releasing all of the oxygen in our lungs. Simply observing how we feel when we slow down the breath, when we bring our attention and our awareness inward. If you notice any thoughts arise, just gently bring yourself back to the breath. Without any judgment or criticism or feelings that you're doing this wrong. You're doing this perfectly. It's a practice. And we can continue to allow ourselves to come back to the breath, back to the present moment, connecting deeper with the body. And we'll do a couple more rounds of this slow, deep inhale and exhale through the nose. Seeing if you can slow your breath down a little bit more. Allowing yourself to fully soften and release. And we're going to connect with our heart. So if you haven't already done so, just really start to bring your attention to the heart. If it feels good for you, you can also go ahead and place your left hand over the heart. The hands are connected to the heart. And it can really help to activate this area and bring us deeper into our heart space. If it feels good, you can even put your right hand over your heart. Just allowing yourself to do whatever feels best for you in this moment. Now that we are connected with the heart, maybe you've kind of released from that breath and allowed that breath to just calibrate to its natural flow. Still breathing, softly, slowly, in through the nose and exhaling through the nose, but focusing your attention and your awareness on the heart. As you continue to focus on the heart, maybe noticing a gentle smile emerge on your face as you connect with this loving awareness, this feeling of grateful awe, love, compassion, gratitude. Allowing this feeling to grow as you continue to soften and expand. Allow this feeling of grateful awe and loving awareness to fill every cell of your being, almost as if each and every cell is just smiling and radiating this loving energy, allowing it to fully radiate and fill the entire room. As you continue to soften, relax, and surrender into this present moment, this eternal now moment. Allowing yourself to bathe in this energy that is you. This is your true nature. And it is with you at all times. We're simply remembering who we are, what we are. This loving awareness in the eternal now moment. And if it feels good for you, you can stay right here, keeping your full attention and your awareness on this feeling of presence. Or if it feels good, you can begin to scan the body, noticing any areas where you may be holding on to any tension, any heaviness. And allowing your breath to just be present with those sensations, those feelings. Simply observing what is there and allowing them to dissolve, to soften, or perhaps stay. We're not creating any stories or attaching to any beliefs around why we're feeling a certain way. We're just simply noticing and observing as we continue to scan the body or to sit at the altar of our heart. Just really relaxing the forehead, the brow bones, allowing them to soften. Maybe releasing any tension you're holding on to in the jaw, just allowing the mouth to fully soften. Bringing more relaxation into the entire face. Allowing your shoulders to drop. Maybe your head to slightly bow. Lengthening the spine. Softening the belly. Letting go of any tension in the hips. Allowing the legs to soften. The feet. Letting go. Surrendering. There's nowhere you need to be but here, right now. And once you've scanned the body and you've allowed yourself to come into a deeper state of relaxation, you can come back into the heart. If you've lost that connection with this eternal life, this eternal love, this presence that emerges from this eternal now moment, just take a moment to reconnect with that feeling, that sense of grateful awe, and that loving awareness. Taking a moment to be in gratitude, thanking yourself for showing up today, for being here on this call, creating time in your day to come home to yourself, to connect with your natural state of being. Sending yourself so much love, gratitude, and compassion for how you show up in your day-to-day life. Meeting yourself where you're at and honoring how far you've come. Maybe taking a moment to set an intention to plant a seed. Something you would like to focus on, cultivate, grow, water in these upcoming weeks. Or maybe offering love to someone who is struggling right now, sending them some of this warmth, this energy that's radiating from your heart, and allowing them to receive it. Knowing that you can always come back to this place when you feel lost, when your mind is running. You can feel yourself spiral. There's so much peace that lives within you when we can connect to the eternal now moment, to the present moment from an embodied place, and activate this embodied presence. You may want to stay here for another moment. You may feel ready, you may feel complete. Just honoring where you're at. And if you feel complete, you can start to gently wiggle the fingers, the toes, maybe gently rocking the head from side to side, rolling the shoulders forward and back, shaking out the hands, the fingers, and the shoulders. Just trusting that your body will move in whatever way it needs to as we come back into this space without rushing. And when you're ready, you can slowly open the eyes. If you have water, I would say definitely go ahead and take a drink of water and drink as many fluids as you can tonight. How does everyone feel? How was that?
Great.
Yeah, very good. It's been a while since I've meditated. So.
Oh, yay. I'm glad that you were able to join for this.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Yeah.
I did this meditation, kind of practicing or feeling into what I wanted to guide you guys through this evening. I did this kind of for myself this morning, and yeah, it's pretty powerful when we can really, really slow down the breath. And I don't know if any of you kind of noticed that presence that we were talking about, that kind of just really emerges as we connect with the heart. And knowing that this is always there, even when we feel so lost and disconnected from it, we can always come back to this. And the more that we practice this, you know, the more activated that is, and the more that we can kind of carry that energy with us throughout our day, and really come into that embodied presence, you know, at all times.
I'm just remembering the song from Pocahontas, the wise tree that says, "Listen to your heart." She's so wise. Oh, I know.
I don't remember that song. Yes, but listen to our hearts. If only we could always remember to listen to our hearts. All right, well, does anyone have anything else that they want to share before we kind of close off today? Any questions that you have? Anything that you were hoping to receive from this class that I maybe didn't touch upon? How do we feel now compared to the beginning of the call? Has anything shifted?
Everything has shifted, of course.
Yay. I love that. I definitely feel a lot more calm and at peace.
I do too. I feel more present.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time for me to really feel this. Like I felt this yesterday with you, but like this was longer and felt so beautiful. Like at the end of the meditation, I was like, I want to hug myself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I want to do this, and I want to feel my whole body, you know, like,
yes, I love it.
Yeah, and I want to give you more love, you know, more care. So that's what I felt. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. And in all aspects, you know, like taking care of the way I eat because I love you, you know, taking care of like everything, you know.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Heather, how are you feeling? Are you feeling any different from before? You were already feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I do definitely feel more calm though.
Yeah,
a little more balanced, and yeah, good to like, be in my body, feel my body. So
yeah. And hopefully, you know, even practices like this maybe can help you discover what's going on with your health. And I hope that you can find answers.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna stop recording.